A few weeks ago, I reviewed the original Jurassic Park trilogy, so now it's time to look back at the first three Jurassic World movies, before the fourth one comes out next week. This could be called the Claire and Owen trilogy, or possibly the Blue trilogy, depending on which character you think has the most personality. 20 years after the first movie in the series, Jurassic World rebooted the franchise with a back-to-basics approach. This time, the island is now a fully functional dinosaur theme park with thousands of visitors. It's an irresistible concept, but you can't help wondering how they persuaded people to go there in the first place. There must have been a massive amount of PR to persuade people that it's actually safe now. That's a story I'd like to see. The first characters we meet are Gray and Zach, two teenagers who have been packed off to the park while their parents get divorced. Gray is obsessed with dinosaurs and possibly autistic, while Zach is older and obsessed with girls. But you don't have to worry about them too much, as they're never mentioned again after this movie. We are introduced to the park through their eyes. It's a massive operation. There's trains and petting zoos and all kinds of rides. It feels much more planned out than the first park. The real main characters for this trilogy are Claire, played by Bryce Dallas Howard, and Owen, played by Chris Pratt. She's an uptight Korean woman who's too busy to hang out with her nephews, and I can't say I blame her, while he's a gruff dinosaur trainer who manages to persuade these vicious killers to back away from him just by using his hands. It's like the setup for a trashy romance novel, and more than a little cliched, but Claire does loosen up and become a lot more competent by the end. Like the first movie, it takes a while to get to the proper dinosaur action. Beyond a couple of raptor eggs hatching at the start, it's 18 minutes before we get to see Owen's team of barely trained raptors, and 35 minutes before it all kicks off as the Indominus Rex escapes. This is the main antagonist of the movie, smarter than a T-Rex and covered in spikes. It's genetically engineered, so the filmmakers don't even have to pretend that it's based on actual animals that once walked the earth. So it has camouflage that enables it to blend into the background, and there are several scenes where it sneaks up on soldiers and devours them, like a dinosaur version of Predator. But it's not the only threat. The pterosaurs escape and attack the crowds, causing chaos, which is exactly what you want from one of these movies. The best part is when a pterosaur carries off Katie McGrath's character Zara, and both of them are eaten by a mosasaur, which is a massive scary sea monster. It's absolutely brutal, one of the most vicious scenes in the entire series. Vincent D'Onofrio's Hoskins is the main human villain. He's not that evil, he just wants to use the raptors as soldiers, and they do eat people at every opportunity, so he may have a point. It's weird to see him with hair before he played Kingpin. Also of note is Jake Johnson as Lowry. He's the comic relief character and knocks it out of the park in every scene. They really should have brought him back for the sequels. Refreshingly, there are very little overt callbacks to the original movie, just the odd reused location or vehicle. They could have been much more blatant about recreating key moments and quoting dialogue, but thankfully that sort of thing is kept to a minimum. When they do repeat things, it's always with a new twist. The boys are caught up in a stampede of dinosaurs, like in the first movie, but they're in a fancy gyrosphere, so they're at least slightly more protected. The ending has the four main characters facing the Indominus Rex alone. You think they have no chance, but Owen gets the raptors to fight on their side, and Claire unleashes the T-Rex. So it's like the stars of the first film are fighting the villain of the reboot, which feels kind of symbolic. And the mosasaur saves the day at the last minute, showing it to the real star of the movie. Overall, it's not quite as good as the original Jurassic Park, but still it's probably the second best one of all of these movies. It's far better than you would expect, keeping callbacks to a minimum and holding back on bringing back the old actors, apart from B.D. Wong as Henry Wu, whose subplot starts here. Very entertaining all round. Three years later, we got the sequel, Fallen Kingdom. For once, this begins with a big action scene. It follows on quite nicely from the end of Jurassic World, as a team go back to the island to retrieve the remains of the Indominus Rex. There's some decent underwater scenes, and they're attacked by a T-Rex and a mosasaur. So it's very much like a speedrun of the greatest hits to remind people of what happened in the last movie, but it's a good way to kick things off all the same. Jeff Goldblum makes a brief appearance as Ian Malcolm. He's only really in one scene, arguing about the dangers of dinosaurs. It's a good scene, but restricting him to just a cameo feels like a waste of one of the best characters. Instead, Claire is front and centre, running a dinosaur charity now. which is a bit like if Jaws 2 had Chief Brody running a shark preservation society. She is persuaded by the evil Eli Mills, played by Ray Spall, to go back to the island to rescue as many dinosaurs as they can before the volcano erupts. A volcano that was never mentioned in any of the previous movies. Claire recruits Owen once more. He's building a house single-handed to prove what a manly macho man he is. You would think he'd need at least one other person to help carry the planks. Maybe he trained a lizard to do it. Also along for the ride are Claire's colleagues. There's Franklin, played by Justice Smith, who's absolutely useless and just complains about everything. He should have brought back Jake Johnston instead. There's also Zia, played by Victoria Pineda, who is a vet who specialises in dinosaurs, which is very handy for this particular mission. They all travel to the ruins of Jurassic World, and there's a neat shot where the camera pans through a gift shop, and one of the toys turns out to be a small dinosaur and hops away. Once the bad guys capture Blue, the good guys are left to die on an island full of dinosaurs, and also an exploding volcano, which raises the stakes far beyond any of the other movies. There's a fun bit of physical comedy, as Owen tries to escape the lava while being half paralysed. And there's the biggest stampede scene yet, with every possible kind of dinosaur running away from the lava. It all ends in a big action scene when Owen saves Claire from drowning as her bubble craft is trapped underwater. And the scene of them leaving the island is strangely moving, as we see the Brachiosaurus burning to death. It was the first dinosaur we saw in the original movie, so it feels very much like the end of an era. On the ship, Zia heals Blue, and there's a tense scene where Owen and Claire take blood from a T-Rex. For once, they're all right up close to the dinosaurs, and the animatronics are better than ever. The rest of the movie all takes place on the Lockwood estate, a huge mansion on top of a massive underground complex. James Cromwell's Lockwood is an obvious stand-in for John Hammond, another caddy old man who created dinosaurs with the best of intentions. He even has a granddaughter, Maisie, played by Isabel Sermon. For once, she's a decent kid character, bright and inquisitive, climbing all over the mansion like a young Lara Croft. Mills kills Lockwood when he finally finds out what's going on under his house. There must have been some really good soundproofing for him not to have found out any earlier. To be fair, they have just brought in all the dinosaurs to hold a massive auction. Although it does feel a bit small scale, all the dinosaurs go for about $10 million, when really they should be worth billions. They are meant to be the only members of their species left on the planet after all. Obviously it all goes horribly wrong, as Dr. Wu's latest creation, the Indoraptor, breaks free and starts stalking the halls of the mansion. It can't turn invisible, but it is very intelligent, so it is quite a tough opponent. These scenes of dinosaurs in the house feel like an updated version of the Lost Worlds ending, and there are some beautiful images as the Indoraptor poses on the roof and then menaces Maisie in her bedroom like Nosferatu. Maisie runs into Claire and Owen and immediately bonds with them as her substitute parents. It's a good thing they turn out to be decent people, as she's far too trusting. And the ending has Owen, Claire, Maisie and Blue all working together to take down the Indoraptor, which is another fine example of interspecies cooperation. And finally, Maisie frees all the dinosaurs and sets them loose on the entire world, so she could turn out to be the greatest mass murderer in human history. Also, she turns out to be a clone, but that doesn't really have much relevance. It would have been much more interesting if she turned out to have dinosaur DNA, with her eyes turning yellow and scales appearing all over her body, but I guess that would be a very different kind of movie. Overall, it's a hard movie to evaluate. The story is much more original than any of the previous installments, but it does feel like two separate movies stuck together, and neither one of them really have enough room to breathe. There's also a little sense of danger. All the good guys survive, but all the bad guys get eaten by dinosaurs. They could have killed off Franklin to at least give the impression that no one was safe. Still, the ending does open up all sorts of amazing possibilities for a whole world full of dinosaurs. There's countless stories you could tell with dinosaurs loose in the modern world, so you can't help getting excited about what could come next. Finally, until next week, there's Jurassic World Dominion from 2022. Again, this follows on from where the previous film left off, with dinosaurs now spread over the entire world. Though sadly it doesn't do anything that interesting with the idea. There are some fun scenes at the start, with a mosasaur attacking a fishing trawler, and Owen on horseback rounding up dinosaurs, using his trademark hand gesture to control them. Although it really should only work on Blue, as he's trained her since birth. Claire is still working with Franklin and Zia at the start, to liberate exploited dinosaurs, though in a much more hands-on fashion than she did in Fallen Kingdom. And she's been living with Owen and Maisie in secret, in a cabin that Owen probably built with his bare hands. Maisie is now a sulky teenager, which is understandable as they've kept her locked up for 4 years and should probably be arrested. For once, they are not recruited to go to an island. Instead, the story comes to them. Maisie is kidnapped along with Blue's child Beta. They've been living in the woods near Owen's cabin instead of somewhere warm. Owen tells Blue he'll bring her baby back, and she understands him somehow. Owen and Claire track the kidnappers to Malta, where there is an underground market trafficking in dinosaurs, which is a really cool environment, and certainly not something we've seen in this series before. And there's a big action scene as they're chased through the streets by dinosaurs, ending with Owen riding his bike onto a plane. It's certainly exciting, but it feels more like something out of a Mission Impossible or Fast and Furious movie, just with added dinosaurs. While all this has been going on, the other half of the movie brings back the 3 big stars from the original Jurassic Park, together again for the first time. Ellie Sattler investigates a plague of giant locusts, which is one of the scariest scenes in the movie. Turns out they've been genetically engineered by the evil company Biosyn and their evil leader Lewis Dodgson, who operates a dinosaur sanctuary in Italy, which seems to be just a front for all the evil stuff, although it would cost billions. Ellie recruits Alan Grant. They are both single now, so they get to finally have a happy ending together. So if anyone spent the last 30 years desperately hoping those two would end up together, they finally get their wish. Ian Malcolm is also back, still lecturing about the dangers of dinosaurs. Why Biosyn are paying him to do that is another question. So there are a fair few scenes with the old trio back together, which is more than we got in the Star Wars sequels. Meanwhile, Owen and Claire crash their plane outside of Biosyn, and there are some decent scenes of them escaping dinosaurs, with Owen being chased on a dinosaur, on and under the ice, and Claire crawling through the undergrowth as she's stalked by a dinosaur with massive claws. Both of these are really good scenes, which are as good as anything in the earlier movies. Sadly, there is once again a distinct lack of jeopardy. For the second film running, the good guys are constantly being chased by dinosaurs, but they always escape unscathed, and only the bad guys are allowed to die. So by now it feels like Owen and Claire are the luckiest people on the planet. In the lab, Maisie meets Dr. Wu, who's working with the bad guys again, but he finally develops a conscience and just wants to save lives now, to make up for all the people killed by his creations in the last few movies. It's the most character development he's ever had, and BD Wong jumps at the chance to flesh him out. Maisie escapes the lab and meets up with Ellie and Alan. She does not immediately adopt them as her new parents, so that shows some growth. They escape through the old amber mines, which is just an excuse to have dinosaurs leap out at them from the shadows. Once Ian Malcolm gets them out, they all meet up with Owen and Claire, and their pilot, who's also a character. Again, the 2 generations all meeting up with the same scene is not something the Star Wars movies did. And we get some fun scenes of Malcolm with Owen and Ellie with Claire. So for anyone who's followed the whole series, it feels like a big event. But the older characters are still far more interesting than the newer ones, even though they've probably had less screen time. Eventually, Dodgson is ripped to shreds by a pack of dinosaurs, but not before unleashing a plague of burning locusts to burn down the entire sanctuary. Possibly by accident, but the character is all over the place, so who knows. And the good guys all escape, but not before one final encounter with this movie's big bad dinosaur, the Gigantosaurus. It never has enough screen time to seem like a major threat, and the T-Rex takes it down at the end, just like it does with all the other big dinosaurs at the end of all these movies. It's all hopelessly predictable, really. Finally, Owen returns baby Beta to Blue. Blue says, "Thanks, dude, I owe you one." And Owen says, "No problem, bro. We're family." Metaphorically speaking, anyway. Overall, it's a bit of a mess, with 2 separate plot lines awkwardly joined together, and not enough time for either one of them to develop fully, even though it's a very long runtime. Plus 2 separate casts of characters that join up at the end. It feels both too long and not really enough to cram everything in. It's good that they finally got away from the island setting, but most of it takes place in a remote sanctuary that might as well be an island. And the whole idea of dinosaurs being at large in the world is barely explored, so it's a definite failure. So that's the Jurassic World series so far, until next week when the new one comes out. I don't even know if I'll be going to see it yet. I'm a bit burned out on these movies, to be honest. But Gareth Edwards is a good director, and the cast is all new, so it could be worth a watch. So press like or subscribe if you want to see my review of that, or any of the other movies that I will definitely be covering later in the month. And I'll see you next time.